Hi YouTube, we're currently in the third week of the coronavirus lockdown in the UK. I'm not isolating in my home studio, I'm actually in my girlfriend's spare room, so I can't do anything particularly useful in the studio, so I thought I'd do a video on how to order a custom guitar and maybe go through the whole process from speccing a guitar, ordering it, all the way through to hopefully when I've owned it for a month or so if I'm happy with what I've received. So I wanted to start the video by telling you why you shouldn't buy a custom guitar. I think there's a bit of a myth and a misconception amongst guitarists that custom shop instruments are somehow a level above high-end production models. I don't think that's true. I think if you find a production model that's got all the features that you need, for instance like an Ibanez Prestige or some of the higher level Jacksons for instance, or even the better Fenders, there's no reason why you shouldn't go with that guitar if that's what you like. You don't need to plough loads of extra money into having a custom instrument to do the same things that a production model that you like does. For instance, I have this guitar, which is a beautiful custom shop Ibanez. You know, I really love this guitar for a variety of reasons, but I also have this Ibanez 6-string Prestige, the RG652 AHM, which is another beautiful guitar, and quality-wise, this is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with this guitar. Obviously, one has a piezo system, one's a 7-string, the other's a 6-string, so they do different jobs for me, hence why I own them both. But I wouldn't say that the custom shop is any greater than the high-end Prestige. They're both really, really well-made instruments with a high attention to detail and quality control, so happy with both of them. My general rule about ordering a custom shop is that I would only go for something like that if I can't find a production model that fulfills all of the needs I have for that guitar. It doesn't have all the features, or it would be prohibitively expensive or perhaps destructive to try and install those things on a guitar. A good example of this is the Ibanez RGD 7UC, which is a fantastic guitar. The RGD is my favourite guitar. It's got a fixed bridge, it's got a baritone scale length, it's got a basswood body. The Prestige basswood tends to be really good. However, it's got no piezo system, so I would have to install that, cut into a high-end guitar. And by the time I've done that, the cost and the effort involved is probably the same as a custom shop. So in this instance, I can justify ordering a custom shop as the cost and risk of modifying the RGD is outweighed by the cost of ordering a custom. So I've got a guitar collection that I'm very happy with. However, I am now ordering a new custom guitar for 2020, and I want to go through the reasons for that. I've got in my guitar collection several guitars that all do different things really well. For instance, my Ibanez, the piezo system on that is absolutely fantastic, and I use that for all my crystal clean sounds. I've got a Prestige 6-string which I use in the studio for when bands come to record or when I want to use something that's not a 7. And I have a production level Ibanez Iron Label which I've modded myself, which sounds absolutely fantastic at rhythm tones, and actually sounds better than guitars 8-9 times its price, which hurts a little bit. But what I want is a guitar that can do all these things together. I know a little bit more than I did when I ordered my first custom shop, so I'm hoping that all the different things I found in different guitars I can turn into one guitar that can do all the things that I want in one and look really cool as well. So there are different kinds of custom shops, and it can be a little bit overwhelming if you first start looking into it. There are full custom shops such as Crimson Guitars in the UK, which will do literally anything for a price. They'll make all sorts of weird and wonderful things, crazy outlandish designs, pretty much anything that you want they will make, as long as it's possible they'll do it. You then have the semi-customs, which is where most builders fall into. That's where they have a variety of body shapes and different options, and usually they'll have an options list which you can go through and customise your guitar that way. So usually you're a bit more limited in what you can have, and that has pros and cons, because if you're wondering what, for instance, like a Poplar Burl top with a translucent pink finish looks like, someone's probably already had that, so you can probably find out what it's likely to look like ahead of time. It's not a full custom, however you might find that certain builders will offer things that are outside their normal catalogue. If it's possible to do so, for instance, you might be able to provide a top wood, or you might be able to have a special order, something that I wouldn't normally do, but you'll probably end up paying a lot more for that. There is a third kind of custom builder which do batch runs, and some of the others do this as well. For instance, Ormsby in Australia do this quite often, and this is where they'll offer a spec'd out guitar, and they will, for instance, do 50 of those, and people buy onto that run, and they make those guitars and they send them out when everyone's paid their money, and then that guitar's not made anymore. So they're basically limited edition batch runs, which you can buy into at the right time at the right price. However, I tend to find that those don't fit what I'm after. Some of them look really great, but they've got features which either I don't need or I don't want. So I tend to go for the second option, the semi-custom, because you kind of know what you're getting, and they've got enough options where you can have something quite unique if you want it. So when you're deciding what you want in your custom guitar, you're going to have some minimum requirements, and you should spend a lot of time thinking about this, and not just thinking about it, testing it out, not just reading what somebody's wrote on the internet. If you think you like ash bodies, make sure you've played a lot of guitars with ash bodies so you know that is definitely the sound that you're going for. People will try and help on the internet if you ask, forums for advice, but they tend to put in their own perspective. For instance, I play, down-tuned metal. My rhythm tone isn't really a guitar tone. It's based out of modelers, really. You can't really replicate it on a tube amp, but I don't care. I like the way it sounds. And I also have really processed crystal sounds, which are, piezo sounds with a ton of compression, reverb and delay, and other sort of ambient tones. So if I ask on a Telecaster forum and they start telling me about different things, it might not apply to what I'm doing. So the main things I think you really need to focus on and make sure you definitely know what you're getting into are the body wood, the scale length and the bridge type, and for me the fourth one, a piezo system as well. Okay, so when you're certain on the sort of broad specs that you're going to go for, you need to choose a brand, and that's probably one of the most important parts of the process. You want to look at things like the cost, the reliability of the builder. You want to make sure there are no horror stories, for instance guitars taking years to finish, or extra money being asked for, or companies suddenly going bust and then appearing under a different name elsewhere. Make sure that people are getting their guitars and they're happy with what they're getting. One of the most important things you can do is read honest reviews, especially if you can get those reviews a couple of months after the guitar's being owned. I say that because when you get a new guitar, most of the time you're really happy with it, and you don't tend to notice slight flaws or problems with it, just because you've obviously spent a lot of money and you want to enjoy what you've bought. If you can find reviews where someone's owned something for a while and really put it through its paces, then you're going to get a much more honest review. Audio clips are really helpful as well. Every player sounds differently. However, you can kind of get the impression that you and the reviewer are on the same page, because when I say tight, high gain rhythm tone, that might not mean, someone who is playing like sort of 80s metal might mean, it's the same words, but we mean slightly different things. For instance, I really like the reviews on ergnerds.com, which is a website based on extended range guitars. I like long scale lengths, and I like down-tuned metal, so I know that the people reviewing the guitars on that site are coming from the same kind of place that I am when I'm looking for different features in a guitar. Location in the world is also important. Obviously, if you buy a guitar from the other side of the world, shipping is going to be an issue, customs, VAT, that kind of stuff. You have to factor that into your build. And also communication. If communication's an issue, then you might end up with a feature on the guitar which you're not happy with just because of a misunderstanding. So I own a lot of Ibanez guitars. I also own a Ibanez guitar. For this custom shop, I'm going with Kiesel, and I'll go through my reasons for that. I chose Kiesel because I've been impressed with a lot of stuff being shown that's coming out of there. Cost was definitely a factor, because through their manufacturing processes and the way their custom shop is done with like a sort of finite list of options that you can have, I think they use a lot of CNC machining. Their costs tend to be a bit lower than other places. They've got very, very good reviews. I really liked a lot of the models that they are producing, particularly the Aries, because it looks a lot like the RGD, which I've said a few times is my favourite guitar. Also, they seem to have good customer service and good customer engagement. that might not seem like a big deal, but if you're able to communicate with the people that are building your guitar quite easily, whether that's through social media or email, then you're going to have a much better experience. For instance, miners make incredible guitars, but you generally communicate with your dealer rather than the company themselves. And I get that they obviously want to focus mainly on building, high quality instruments and having to deal with social media and time wasters and people wanting quotes just for sort of fantasy guitars is not ideal. However, Kiesel seem to engage with their customers a lot more on social media. They do a lot of live streams, Q&As, factory walkthroughs, that kind of stuff. That just make the whole process a bit more fun and exciting. Build time's also a factor. My miners took over a year to build. Kiesel are currently giving a 12-week rough estimate, so that's a little bit better for me. The next thing you need to think about is your budget, which can be a bit of a dirty word. And more money does not necessarily mean better guitar. When it comes to paying for your guitar, if you can afford to buy it outright, that's 100% the best option. However, finance isn't a dirty word, but just be sensible. I personally like to try and have at least 50% or 75% of the money put aside before I place my order. If you go on Facebook Marketplace or eBay, there are scores of guitars being sold by people that can't keep up their finance payments. So, if you can't afford it, don't buy it. It's that simple. Another important thing is don't mess the vendor about for money. Make sure you're prompt with your payments, because this is people's livelihood, and they don't care that you're a starving musician. They've got to run their factory at the end of the day. Make sure that you're not messing people about with money. Just be a good person.